Once upon a time, Annie was frozen by her anxiety. She could hardly move or see joy anywhere, until one day she realized her own thoughts could thaw her from the inside. Annie began using her thoughts more and more each day until she warmed up. Then she discovered she was living in a beautiful, enchanted forest, which she can now fully experience. This is Annie's manifesting success story. Hello, and welcome to this episode. I am your host, Cassie Parks, and I am back with Annie for another in her Years of Growth series. Welcome, Annie.
Hello.
Hi. What is awesome?
The amount of joy I feel in my life.
Yay, I love it. And what about the salad that you just ate? You were sharing with me before, I think that is so awesome. So tell us about this magic salad.
Yes. So I did just eat a salad that was really, really delicious. And all the herbs came from my garden and the tomatoes came from my garden and chives and I walked out in my garden and just snipped it fresh. I felt so much joy from eating the salad. And a few years ago, I found myself looking at this area in my front yard. It was all dandelions, not daffodils, dandelions. And my voice was, man, I do not have a green thumb. I kill everything. And then my future self was like, do you want to believe it? Or, my intuition, is this what you want to believe? I was like, no, this is not what I want to, this is not the story I want. And part of my future self is being surrounded by beauty and creating a beautiful place where people feel happy and peaceful, and I feel happy and peaceful and joyful, and just beauty everywhere. And I love flowers, and so I started thinking, I changed my money story. I can change this.
Yes.
Lots of people grow things. I can figure this out. And so I talked to a local farmer, and he said, well, the trick is in the soil. A lot of times people spend a whole bunch of money on all these different plants and then don't on their soil. And the soil is where you really need to invest in. So I did. And everything I planted last year came back. I planted the butterfly bush 2 years ago. And I moved lilies and irises from my mom's house, and they're beautiful. And this year I decided to add herbs and a bunch more perennials that will all come back. And I found all these plants for shady. It's a shady area, mostly shade. And it's just beautiful. I put a little table and I meditate and script out there. And then this is going in a little different direction, but something told me, because a lot of my clients that I work with are kind of in the beginning of processing very painful things, and they need to get it out somehow. And I work with a lot of kids. And so sometimes we write it down on stones or write it on piece of papers and then burn it. And then we decide, what do you want to do with it? And I tell them I have a garden I could plant. And so sometimes they choose to plant it in the garden or just different things. And so now I can write off all my gardening things.
Yes.
Feel like I'm finagling things. It's truly a healing place for my clients. And I even had one client come and plant something, plant a plant. And yeah, it's turned into a lovely thing. And it's like becoming more and more beautiful just every day. And yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I also feel like it's a little bit of a metaphor for your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So just for listeners, we're recording this on July 20th, 2021. And so about 2 years ago, when you were changing that story, heard that whisper from your future self, no, you're surrounded by beauty, right?
is that the story you want to be true is sort of in the beginnings of your future self journey.
Mm-hmm. I think it will be 3 years in September.
Yes. Yes, it will.
Yeah, yeah. And the amount of power that now is like when I hear something like, do I want this to be true? And and it's so immediate now. It's not a conscious thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that I started with something tangible like my bank account, and I can see that there is $20,000 more in there than there was in the but it's a tangible thing that I changed, that it was a certain way for 15 years. And now it is totally different because I said, I heard your podcast. I'm like, I am this. And so it's a powerful thing that it was that tangible. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes. This
and
is why
now,
I like teaching with money. This exact reason. You have a number. You have something, not like, of course your life is better, but in the beginning you really had something that you could track that was tangible, like you're saying. And so that's proof that you can do it with everything.
yeah, on an average, after my paycheck and everything, it was always down to $100, $200. And then I doubled my income, and then I doubled it again. And it just keeps doubling and doubling. And it's wonderful. And that's almost on autopilot now. And now it's like, not quite on autopilot. I mean, I still am involved.
Right.
But my relationships, my every story, I'm a bad cook. Oh, I'm a bad cook. I love eating my cooking. It's fun to cook. I grow things in my garden and go snip and find the exact herb needed to create a delicious meal. Like all of those stories that create my beautiful life. It's fun.
Yay. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And I want to highlight for listeners, because I always love to highlight what is possible, what you guys are showing people is possible. The average in your bank account used to be $100 after you paid your bills, and now it's $20,000. That is amazing. As well as like all of the stories that surround your beautiful life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It fluctuates. It fluctuates,
Yeah,
but it's like, well, and I remember I took bank statements and that had like $2.34 in it and changed it to $10,002.34 and hung it on my manifesting board, and for two different bank accounts. And whenever they both got up there, I was like, I did that.
Yes.
I did.
You did that. You did do that. That's amazing. How does it feel to be the person who did that?
Fun, powerful, exciting. It makes life like zesty and like a happy place to be.
Yes. And I, as your coach, just want to highlight how easily powerful just rolled off of your tongue, because there was a moment where that was not an easy word. I don't remember if it was scary or just uncomfortable or you just didn't like it, but I know.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember the moment because we were trying to find the emotion I was going to work with. And I was like, not powerful. And you're like, oh, yes, powerful.
Like, oh, yeah, that's it.
And using powerful in my script, like I do feel powerful and it feels good.
That is amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
We've touched on this a little bit, but I want you to talk to it a little bit more. Like we've been talking about this. I know one of your biggest ahas since our last interview, or biggest growth, is this renewed awareness of the power to consciously choose your story, which we've talked about. But how is that different than when you first heard, like, oh, choose the story you want to tell?
Well, I see it so much in my life, and then it's practically impossible to keep my mouth shut to other people now, because I was talking, my dog trainer, who is wonderful. And he's trained both of my therapy dogs and teaches me how to make them, be a therapy team. And he said the other day, so by training my dogs, some of my friends heard about him and were amazed. And so they hired him to come to their house and train for a month. And he's from Missouri. And so he's out here for like a vacation to Colorado to train a dog for a month. And he said, "Wow, I'm eating really good here. I can't believe people eat like this. Nobody can afford to eat like this. I'm eating steaks and I can't afford to eat like this." I'm like, "Or you are." And he's like, "I don't know how people afford to eat every day." And I said, "Because money comes in from all different directions every moment. We can afford to eat everything we want." And he looks at me, he's like, I said, "Tell the story you want to tell. Tell the story you want to live." And he's like, "Well, that just sounds like imagining to me." And I said, "No, it's living, it's creating." And like not 1 ounce of me is like, "Oh, sorry to tell you this," but it's like, I can't listen to you do this anymore. You just created this awesome thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It becomes almost, not that I have to run around being bossy to everybody, but it's like there's a joyful way to be like, or
yes, or this. I love the way you said that. Or this, because even when you're telling the story, you're not like, "Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't do." You're like, "No, like, let's choose what we want, right? Choose it." And I love, like, let's live it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it. Or you could look
or I love that. And I love the confidence and joy that comes out even when you can hear that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is, but I think this is one of the biggest questions that we get on Manifest It Now is like, "Oh, how do I change the people around me?" So being that person who can joyfully say that, paint a little bit of how you got to be that person.
I think like, I know this doesn't sound lovely, but editing, and like I've told you in the past that I would delete, like texting was kind of a powerful way of helping me repattern how I communicate. It's like
Yes.
I would type a text and I'd be like, "No, that's not telling the story I want. Delete, 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 delete." And it was like a practice playground of who am I? What story do I want to create? What life do I want to live? And I want to create space for joy and beauty. Worry doesn't have a place here. Like constant worry and um that that like wiry, like worrying about things that used to be kind of a prevalent part of my experience. um, is not. It's not. And there's so much space for joy. And I think that was the process of like really looking, and I think getting some good feedback in my life of it. Like I really dedicated myself to this and threw myself into it. And it's like a garden. Yeah. Like what I focused on has become, and it's beautiful and lovely and joyful.
Yes. Yay. And so for listeners who might be new, I want to highlight a couple things Annie said, which is first, she did the work first before she tried to enroll anyone else. Like if you didn't hear that, that is what happened. Like she edited herself before she started supporting other people in like, "Oh, or you can choose this way," right? It was really about you. And you did dedicate yourself to the work in really the top 10% of people that even are in the Enchanted Circle. Everyone in Enchanted Circle does the work, but even you're at that, like, I'm committed, I'm doing the work all the time. And not all the time as in it's hard, but I'm going to choose all the time. I'm going to edit all the time. I'm going to become more aware today than I was yesterday. And I'll be more aware tomorrow, and I'll choose even better tomorrow and even better the next day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it feels like I noticed it. So lately I haven't gone to the calls. It just whatever work, just hasn't lined up. And I haven't been like, oh man, I suck. I'm not going to the calls. I'm more like, this is curious. Sometimes my schedule lines up perfectly for me to attend 3 calls a week. And sometimes it doesn't at all. This is curious. I wonder. And
Isn't
it's
that
more
interesting?
yeah. Like, and it's been more like, I must not need to be on the calls right now. And I'm doing different, like, instead of like judging it as, oh, I'm slacking, like I'm living. I'm like on my own personal call. I mean, I know this sounds funny, but it's like, it's every part of my day is doing it. Does that make like,
yes.
that makes
It makes total sense to me because that's who you've become and where you've got to. I mean, and it is where you started. Like there was this, I'm all in energy and movement, that continues to evolve, right? You become somebody who, and what you realize, I love that you're sharing this, is because this is how it's supposed to work, right? You come and then you go off a little bit and you come when you need it, when you're growing. But when you're living in the middle, it's okay. And I love that you're trusting this, like, oh, my schedule doesn't line up. Like that means it, like, that's okay. It doesn't mean anything. It actually means it's working.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with my schedule. It's not like, oh, I'm doing, it's perfect. And and then once in a while something will happen and I'm there and I'm excited. And since I do, I'm like, I would like to go to more today or more this week, and somebody will cancel or something else. It'll happen. But it's like, it just feels perfect. It feels like I'm not forcing things.
And what is it? Unfold. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's just a little different. It's like, because I'm consciously creating, but not forcing. And it's like a synergy that happens and it unfolds perfectly. And it's fun.
Yes. And that was just highlighting what I was going to say, is that, you're like, oh, when I say, oh, I want to go for more calls, you just put it out there. You don't go like, oh, digging through your schedule. Well, I can't make a call for 3 weeks. You're just like, I want to go to more calls. And one of your clients cancels and opens up the space for you or something else, right?
Yeah. And I don't have this like, oh gosh, that's a certain amount of money I'm missing if I'm, it's like, that's not even a part of my thought. It's like, oh, cool, this is open. And it's like, money is, every time I turn around, my bank account's more and more and more and more and more, and money is taken care of. Like the money faucet is on, and it's not that it doesn't. I don't exactly know how to. It's like not connected. Does that make sense? It's like, oh, if I do this, I'm going to lose out on that.
Right.
That's not it.
Yes. Yeah. I think what you're trying to say is you turn the money faucet on and you don't have to stand there and hold it on.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah.
So if if a client cancels, you're not like, oh, I'm shutting it off. You're like, oh, it's still on. I don't have to be next to it for it to be, which is the way a faucet works, right? We can turn it on and leave it if we want, right? Yeah. And we don't have to stand next to it and be like, stay open, keep putting water, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you're really living that you've turned the faucet and it's on and you don't have to control it.
Yeah.
That's amazing and exciting.
Really awesome. It really, really is.
It really is. And I think that is an amazing place to kind of wrap up for today's interview. We're going to be back next week and we're going to talk about how Annie's son manifested a piano and how she's doing some writing and everything like that. So make sure to come back next week and see what else is awesome in Annie's life.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are inspired and you're ready to start writing a new money story, a new life story, to really pick the pin up and design your happy ever after, go to enchantedlifeu.com. That's enchantedlifeu.com to get started. For any links that we talked about in the show, you can find the show notes at manifestingsuccessstories.com.